Well, good evening, everyone. Hope you're doing well. Welcome to Connect. It's good to see you. And I thought I'd mix it up this week, and you can join me in my garden, seeing as the weather has been good. I hope you've been out enjoying it yourselves. We've been in Mark 5, as you just read, and really the question that I wanted to kick off with this evening is, where do you go when you are desperate? We were thinking a bit about this on Sunday. Often people go to a whole variety of different places, people, things, when they are desperate to medicate the pain, to help them out, to try and seek a solution. But in Mark 5, we are introduced to two people who, in their moment of desperation, go to Jesus. We have Jairus, whose daughter is dying, and then eventually he receives the terrible news that his daughter is dead. And at the start of our passage, in verse 23, he falls on his knees before Jesus, this well-respected synagogue leader, and begs him to come with him so that he might touch his daughter and his daughter might live. And then the other person who we find in desperation going to Jesus is this woman who has been bleeding for 12 years. She is a social outcast because of her bleeding. In the Jewish laws of the day, you can read it back in Leviticus chapter 15. Her condition made her unclean. It was a sign of spiritual uncleanness. Not that she necessarily herself had done something specifically to deserve this, but she was a living, breathing picture to people of the spiritual symptom of living in a fallen, sinful world. We are cut off from God, we are cut off from one another because of sin, and this woman's condition was a symbol, a picture of that to people. And so these two people, in their desperation, living with the stigma, the threat of death in their lives, go to Jesus. And so we'll talk a bit about, in our groups tonight, where do we go when we're desperate? Where do other people we know go when we are desperate? Why do you think we go to other places apart from Jesus? Because it's not common, is it, for many of us to go to Jesus? So we'll think a bit about that. But more than that, we saw that in our passage that maybe people go to Jesus when we are desperate, but do we stick with Jesus when Jesus waits, and we have to wait for Jesus maybe when we're praying and we're asking him to help us and things don't seem to be getting better? And sometimes do we stick with Jesus when things actually seem to be getting worse? That's certainly a lesson that Jairus learns here in Mark 5 when in verse 36 he's informed not just that his daughter is dying, but in fact she has died. And his friends, his associates say to him, "Come away, leave Jesus now. You went to him, he didn't help you. Don't bother the teacher anymore." Because that's all he is. He's just a teacher. But what Jesus does in the intervening time between Jairus coming to him and then Jairus learning to stick with him is that Jesus gives Jairus a kind of lesson in why Jairus should stick with him through his interaction with this unnamed woman. He heals her as she touches him in faith. His power goes from him and in an instant cleanses her from the bleeding. Jesus then looks for this woman, calls her to himself, and restores her in full view of everyone in the crowd, so that they know not just that Jesus has healed her, but that she is no longer an outcast. And he says to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well." Now, in referring to her as daughter, well, she wasn't Jesus' daughter. Why did Jesus do that? It's because Jairus is about to find out that his daughter is dead, and Jesus is directly drawing the parallel. This woman who has been bleeding for 12 years and this daughter, this 12-year-old daughter who has now died. Jesus is saying to Jairus, listen, it's about to get worse for you, but stick with me because I am the one who can help. I am the one who seeks that which is lost. I am the one who is the life giver, the one who can help you in this worst of situations. So we go to Jesus, And we stick with Jesus when we stop looking at the circumstances around us, but fix our eyes upon him, upon who he is, and upon what he has done and what he can do for us. Because the reality is that those of us who stick with Jesus will rise with Jesus, as we saw on Sunday. Resurrection is in plain view here. This woman with the bleeding is given her life back. It's a kind of resurrection, but then even more amazingly, Jesus walks into this little girl's bedroom and she's dead. But Jesus says to those gathered around, she's just sleeping. See, for Jesus, death is just sleep. He can turn around even the worst situations. And the key is not to be like the crowd and just laugh at Jesus and say, that's nonsense. Jesus actually sends those people outside. But for Jairus and the girl's mother, and for a handful of his disciples, he brings them inside, and they get to witness the fact that he is the life giver, the one who takes the little girl by the hand and says, Talitha kum, little girl, I say to you, get up. And she does. Life comes back to her body. We go to Jesus, we stick with Jesus, because one day we will rise with Jesus. And we experience something of the resurrection power of Jesus in our lives today. And we'll talk in our groups in a moment's time about where are you praying to experience that in your life or in the lives of other people that we know today. But we also live our lives in the hope of that resurrection future, where one day those of us who die trusting in Jesus will rise again to never die. So, enjoy your groups tonight. I hope it's a real encouragement to you, and I look forward to seeing you again this Sunday.